Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and today I'm here with Venchele Saint Dic. I'm going to have you introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. So my name is Venchele Saint Dic. I am a writing brand strategist for my business, Pathway Coach Writing. I'm also currently, pursuing a doctorate degree in public health leadership because my interest is really trying to find creative ways, to serve communities with health disparities. And then also going back to my passion in writing, really empower people to find their voices. And then also empower businesses to use writing as a branding strategy.
It's interesting because a lot of times entrepreneurs, they tend to go in a few different directions. So one of them would be the public health, and then the other side is the writing strategies. And so what led you to become a writing coach?
So what led me to become a writing coach is when I realized that there weren't many organizations or publishers that amplified the voices of people who look like me. And then also women in general and people with disabilities or who struggle with mental health. And I just thought to myself that, you know what, I want to be part of the movement of helping these individuals like tell their stories in a way that resonates with different audiences. Because sometimes I think it's easy to find publishers who will say to you, like, you need to it's almost like they asking you to modify, like the words that you use and how you say it. And in the end, the overall product is not as authentic. And that definitely impacts, the number of sales or people who are able to pick up your book from a library or what have you, or a bookstore. So I just said to myself, just like Toni Morrison said, like, if you want to see something, why not just go ahead and create it yourself? So that's the reason why I decided to become a writing coach.
And you know Anthony Morrison, he's a big person in the community that I run in as well. And so if you've been coaching with him, that's fantastic. Writing is something that sometimes in high school or junior high, people are like, I don't want to write. I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to have to do that. But the more and more I talk to people, they want to tell their story. And speaking particularly for our listeners who they have a journey and sometimes they're not quite sure how to get it out or what to do. And so when you're talking with individuals who are thinking, yeah, I want to write a book, I'm not quite sure, what is your number one suggestion on how to get started?
I think my number one suggestion is always to try to figure out like what is the niche that they're trying to fulfill, like the niche need that they're trying to fulfill. And then also assessing through prompt questions whether or not they need formal training in writing or if they just need individualized support. And I think that's where a writing coach comes into play by helping folks overcome writer's block, organize their ideas, or just refine their narratives. But I have yet to find a client who came to me with like a finished manuscript. Mm-hmm. We've always started from the very beginning to help me tailor my support. Mm-hmm.
So what happens if a business owner or one of our listeners, they don't want to write a book, but in business, I don't think people realize how much writing is involved in starting their business and what they need to do. For example, policies and procedures. Do you help people write some of those type of things for their businesses?
Yes, no, definitely. I do look into policies. I mean, I'm also someone who has written white papers. But again, like I hearken back to the fact that, before I work with any businesses or if I work with people, I need to understand like what is the outcome that they're looking for. Sometimes for some people, it's really creating engagement and having a certain number of followers on their social media sites. And then for some people, it may just be about honing in on the process of writing itself. And my focus, like for both, is really trying to figure out when I'm working with businesses, how they defining like their communication with clients, employees, and other stakeholders, and really helping them understand or get some clarity of thought and expression. And another thing too, it has to do with when we're talking about expanding reach and influence, what does their existing content creation looks like, and how are they using it? Are they using it as a marketing tool? Are they trying to reach a broader audience through blogs? Because even if the business doesn't want to write a book, they still have to be cognizant of honing in on the business focused writing, right? To foster connections with like-minded businesses and potential and essentially generate more client revenue.
And 100% agree with that. And I think that was the next thing I was going to ask you is the branding part of it. You don't even think about blogging, but there's so many different components that go into running your business that includes, I mean, they really are writing a book by creating a story for their business so that they can brand it and making sure that it gets out there the right way. So let's switch gears for a minute and talk about cultural sensitivity and localization. So how important are those two things in market expansion, and what are some common pitfalls that we should avoid?
I think the common pitfall, at least based on my experiences with working with clients, is really trying to follow the trend. So essentially picking a said influencer and then pretty much replicating everything that they do. And I think that when people do that, sometimes it could be seen as being scattered. And then also too, it may not, it may, like, again, the content creation piece, like, does it become supportive to clients' needs? And so I think in order to succeed and really employing this cultural sensitivity, I think we have to be aware of and become understanding and respecting the differences in values of our clients. And the best way to do it is like I usually do for my business is like have them fill out a survey right after the call. Like I think after 3 days, like there's a survey that goes to them to ask them like what the experience was with me. And again, I ask for constructive feedback, like what is something that I should have addressed for the past 3 or 6 sessions that I did not address. And it gives me an opportunity to retract and to re-explore other ways to build a relationship or continue to build my relationship with this client. And then, or just having that conversation, right, upright. And that will help perhaps help us see again how people move from various cultural backgrounds, like how you can coach them more effectively to foster inclusion, minimize misunderstandings, and build positive relationships.
So how did you get into public health then, if you're doing writing? Because I mean, you're pursuing your PhD, so clearly you're going to have to write a dissertation, and that's writing in and of itself. But how did you get into that side of things?
Into public health? No, absolutely. So initially, when I was younger, like I've always wanted to work with children. So I was going to pursue a doctorate degree in medicine. And then because I was born in the States, but I grew up in another country, because my family is from France, Martinique, and Haiti, respectively. And so because I've lived in Haiti for the majority of my life, and even though I wasn't poor myself, but I was surrounded, just like in the United States, like when you go from one zip code to the next, the disparities are pretty alarming, right? And in terms of access to healthcare, it looks different from zip code to zip code. So that was the same issue in Haiti. I grew up in an upper middle class family, but I was surrounded by by people who probably didn't have the same privileges that I did, right? Like 2 or 3 zip codes away from mine. And I don't know, it just bothered me a lot to have access to all of this opulence, but then everyone around me was suffering. And I kind of vowed to myself that I wanted to create more equity, or to be part of the movement of creating more equity, so that people could enjoy these liberties as well. Because I'm a firm believer, as someone who works in public health, that health is wealth.
Mhm.
right? And health to me it should not be a privilege. It should be a human right. And so that's the reason why I landed in public health. I think even when I think back, when I was like a pre-med student in college, I realized that perhaps I don't want to do case management and I want to focus more on population health. And that's where the transition happened. And I went on to volunteer in the Peace Corps, right, to explore that interest a little bit further. And that's how I realized how much I enjoy doing field work and working with people directly, and and seeing like the fruits of my labor, right, as I'm helping them, as I'm seeing an idea sprout into a realized objective.
Do you think that you will marry those two together? I mean, because getting people to express their emotions and express their feelings, I think for me, from the time I was 8 years old, I kept a journal and I faithfully wrote in that journal every single week until like 2005 when I had my fourth kid. And then, too many kids. I didn't take the time to do that. So do you foresee yourself kind of with the public health using your writing skills to impact the youth?
Yes, and I'm already doing that because again, I think that public health, the field itself requires you to build rapport and with many people, many partners. And what glues us together is the communication. To go back on your question on cultural sensitivity, language is what creates stronger teamwork and collaboration in diverse environments. And then also it increases effectiveness in global business or cross-cultural negotiations. And public health involves people working in different sectors, whether you're an epidemiologist or a policymaker or a community health worker. The only way to build rapport is really through language. And so that's the reason why I make it my business to hone in on the nuances of language, not just in English, but also in the two other languages that I know how to speak very well, fluently, French, and then also in Spanish, and then in Haitian Creole. So yes.
Mhm. Good for you. That's an accomplishment. So you have founded a business yourself, correct?
Yes. The name of it is Pathway Coach Writing.
And so what are some of the things that you wish you would have known or somebody told you when you started out that you've learned through that business?
Um, I think I think for me, as someone who's always felt that I was self-sufficient, I say to people now not to do that because sometimes it could give the impression that you're an island. And so if there are resources in your community or in your county that can help you start a business, I say to take advantage of them. And that's something I didn't know before because when I first became a business owner, like I tried to do everything on my own. Like I knew that I didn't want the brick and mortar, like I didn't want a brick and mortar building or shop. But even the process of developing an online business, like it doesn't have to be complicated, at least not as complicated as as I made it seem. I also think as well, you don't have to have everything, put together. I know for me, like I only had like my vision board, like this notebook that I had and a pen. That was pretty much it. That's how I started, right?
Mhm.
You don't have to have everything together. You don't have to have $1,000 in the bank. And even when we're talking about logo and branding, I mean, there are resources. There's Fiverr. Call a friend who may know a friend who can do this for you, like at an affordable price. And that's how, for me, what I wish someone had told me is that I didn't need to go and pay thousands of dollars for marketing when I was not even making. I did like, when I didn't even have my first client because for Pathway Coach Writing, what people don't know, the story behind it is at the time I was doing this informally. I just didn't have a website to show for it. And I started this when I was a college student. People would ask me to read their papers and give them constructive feedback. I didn't really take it seriously, if I'm going to be honest, because at the time I didn't know anyone who had a successful business in writing. Each time people think of writers, the thought that came to mind is these people may be they're struggling. They're struggling to make ends meet. And I kept thinking this is not how I wanted to live my life. But I'm telling you, things do change, needs evolve. And I think that as a business owner, you always need to have your finger on the pulse on what's going on. And that's where conferences come into play. They have writers centers. They have meetup groups where people come in. They don't necessarily need to talk to each other, which is a little bit odd, but they just sit there with each other and write. And so looking back in retrospect, I think it's important to use the resources that you have, the free resources you have in your county, in your state, to get you started with your business.
That is fantastic advice, because a lot of people don't know that there's even grants and different things that they can apply for and get help setting up their business. So great advice. Okay, now that you've been in, how long have you been doing this now?
I've been doing this for more than 10 years. Didn't have an official website until like right before the pandemic, but I've been doing this since like I was since I was a college student.
Okay. So now that you've been doing it for 10 years, because to get through even the first 3 to 5, that's most business owners end at that time. And I'm actually in my 10th year as well. And so now that you've been around the block, what's advice that you have for our entrepreneurs right now that are existing business?
This is a tough one. This is a tough one. Let me think. I think what comes up for me as soon as you ask the question is perhaps for entrepreneurs to start with a clear vision of what outcome that they want for their business, and then who are they going to be serving. Because like I said, it's so easy to get lost in the maze because you're trying to make a name for yourself, and you also in a way trying to make that first good impression. But I say just ditch that, ditch that part, and just really try to understand and do some self-reflection on why your business should exist and what problem are you trying to solve. And then really set realistic goals, establish short-term and long-term objectives to guide your actions. And that's very important to me because, for example, if you're a parent and you don't have a lot of time, setting a goal to like set up a business within, I don't know, 2 months may be unrealistic. So being very honest with the time table that you're working with in your individual capacity, because building a business should not be a chore. It should be something fun. It should be something that you look forward to doing. I mean, there are going to be times, just like any 9-to-5 job, that you're tired. You get tired, you get burned out. And I think by setting those short-term and long-term objectives, it gives you an idea of how you want to manage your schedule. I mean, again, for me, like as a writing coach, one of the myths is that once you're a writing coach, you work on every project. And I know there are some projects that I rejected because I just didn't have the capacity, to give 100% of myself to that client. And I think that it would have been selfish for me to take someone's money, right? Hard-earned money, and then not give them 100%. So being selective of the projects that you work on is very important. Again, do your research, understand the market. But really focusing on creating a personal profile of the types of people you want to work with. For me, I'm very big on working with clients who are going to put in the effort. Because again, the relationship between a writing coach and a client is what it is. It's a relationship. It can't be a one-way street. And so that's something to keep in mind. And then also looking at your competitors, what are they not addressing that you could include in your business plan? And also remembering, and this is something I've had to learn because my business is a sole proprietorship business. You may not be the messenger for every project. You may have to delegate the project to someone else in your network. And that's okay. It doesn't make you a failure. It just makes you smart. because then you're not spending a lot of time just kind of beating your head on a wall, trying to be something for someone that you're not supposed to be. And so that's what I would say. Then test your product or service with, potential clients, existing clients, to ensure, there is a real demand for that service. Like for me, one of the newest services that I've included is I help people get onto podcast platforms too. But again, I would have not been able to even address that need, which was presented to me like 6 years ago. And I didn't even think that I had the capacity to do this. But then I said to myself, I set a goal that I was going to try to market myself to podcasts and see what worked and what didn't work. And then share that information with my clients. Because I'm not, as a writing coach, I'm not going to propose something that I haven't done myself. Because that also is part of creating transparency and trust.
Well said. It's just beautiful. All your advice. And it's so true. I agree wholeheartedly. So thank you so much, Venchele, for coming on. If our listeners wanted to find you, how would they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. People can visit my website, which I know that you'll be sharing with them, at www.pathwaycoachwriting.com. They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always hanging out on that platform, Instagram, and other social media sites, to learn more about my mission and what I do and how we can work together.
Well, thank you so much. And Unbreakable Moms, it's okay to write and get your thoughts down. And if you're thinking about writing a book, reach out. If you're thinking, I need help with my policies and procedures, or, even the podcast, if you're looking for podcasts, it sounds like she is very well-rounded and has a lot of experience. So go out and make it a great day. And again, thank you for coming on. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.